Welcome to Built, Not Burnt Out, the podcast where we help you build lasting health by transforming your mindset, metabolism, and momentum. I'm your host, Melissa Petersen, a mom of 10, an attorney for more than 26 years, a group fitness instructor for more than 22 years, an ARC certified food addiction advocate, health coach, speaker, and the founder of the Becoming Method, a carnivore for more than 4 years and creator of this podcast. Through changing my mindset, nutrition, habits, and identity, I've lost over 36 pounds and 48.8 inches. I've improved my health. I've discovered the lasting transformation is not about perfection. It's about becoming the healthiest version of yourself. And whether you're looking to lose weight, break free from food addiction, improve your metabolic health, or simply build a healthier life, I'm so glad you're here. So let's get into today's episode. So the title of my topic today is why the scale changes when you didn't gain fat. So something that everybody can relate to. So stop letting the scale tell you who you are. So before we jump into this topic, I want to ask a question, and you can just answer it to yourself. And I want you to answer honestly. How many of you have ever stepped on the scale first thing in the morning and allowed that number to determine your mood for the rest of the day? I know I have. And maybe the number was lower than you expected, and you smiled and you felt motivated and you thought, I'm really doing great. But what happens when the opposite occurs? You step on the scale and suddenly your entire outlook changes and you start questioning yourself, what did I do wrong? I knew this wasn't going to work. And maybe I shouldn't have eaten that. Maybe I need to eat less. Maybe I need to work out twice today. Maybe I'll never lose this weight. Does that sound familiar? I think almost everyone who has ever tried to lose weight has experienced this. And here's what fascinates me. Nothing about your body actually changed in those 5 seconds between getting out of bed and stepping on the scale. The only thing that changed was the information you received. And then your interpretation of that information, and that interpretation changed your emotions, your confidence, your motivation. And sometimes it even changed your behavior for the rest of the day. And that's a tremendous amount of power to give one little number. And so tonight, I want to help you take that power back. Because I truly believe one of the healthiest things that we can do is develop a healthier relationship with the scale. Not necessarily throw it away and not necessarily weigh every day, but to understand what it's actually telling us. Because here's the truth. The scale is not lying to you, but it's also not telling you the whole story. The scale is a tool, not a judge. So think about the tools that you use every day. Your speedometer tells you how fast you're driving. Your gas gauge tells you how much fuel that you have. Your thermometer is telling you the temperature. But they don't tell you whether you're a good person. They don't tell you whether you're successful. And they don't determine your worth. They're simply tools. And so the scale is exactly the same. It measures one thing, your body weight, and that's it. It doesn't measure your discipline. It doesn't measure your consistency. It doesn't measure your health. It doesn't measure your character. And it doesn't measure how hard you worked. It certainly doesn't measure your value as a human being. Yet so many of us treat it like we're handing down a verdict. Good job, or you're failing. You're succeeding, or you're hopeless. The scale never says those things. We do. The number is neutral, and our interpretation is emotional. The story that we tell ourselves is, think about this. Imagine 2 women. Both step on the scale. They both have gained 2 pounds. And the first woman says, interesting. I wonder what caused that. And the second woman says, I'm a failure. Same number, completely different story. The number didn't create the emotion, but the story did. One became curious and one became critical. Which do you think is likely to stay more consistent? The curious one, because curiosity leads to learning. Criticism usually leads to quitting. And one of the biggest mindset shifts I've made in my own journey is replacing judgment with curiosity. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" I started saying, "What is my body telling me?" These two questions produce completely different outcomes. The scale doesn't measure fat. Now let's talk about the science, because once you understand what the scale actually measures, you'll breathe a sigh of relief. And here's the biggest misconception that people have. They think the scale actually measures fat. It doesn't. And even the reader on your scale, if it does mention body fat, it's not necessarily accurate. It can only show you a trend. The scale does measure your total body weight. Think about everything your body contains: body fat, muscle, bone, organs, water, food in your digestive system, waste. Everything contributes to your body weight. The scale has no idea which one changed. It simply adds everything together and gives you a number. So when your weight goes up 2 pounds overnight, the scale isn't saying, "Congratulations, you gained 2 pounds of fat." It's simply saying, "Today your body weighs 2 pounds more than it did yesterday." And those are two completely different statements. So did you really gain 2 pounds of fat? Let's use some common sense for a minute. Imagine you ate really well yesterday. You got your protein, you got your water, you exercised, you slept well, and then you stepped on the scale this morning. 2 pounds heavier. Did you suddenly create 2 pounds of body fat while you were sleeping? Probably not. To store 2 pounds of body fat would generally require an enormous calorie surplus, far more than simply eating one healthy dinner. Yet we often react as though 2 pounds of fat appeared overnight. Our brains jump to the worst conclusion. Instead of asking, "Did I gain fat?" start asking, "What else could explain this?" That's one question that changes everything. So you need to think like a detective. So one of my favorite things about coaching is helping people become detectives. So imagine you're investigating in a mystery, and you wouldn't arrive at a crime scene, look at one clue, and then immediately solve the case. You'd gather evidence, you'd ask questions, and you'd look for patterns. You'd stay curious, and that's how we should approach our health. The scale is up, my plan isn't working. We should not say that. Instead, we should say, "What happened yesterday? Did I eat at a restaurant? Did I have more sodium? Did I eat more carbohydrates? Did I have a really hard workout? Am I sore today? Did I sleep poorly? Am I stressed? How's my digestion? Could hormones be affecting me?" Now, by asking these types of questions, we're investigating instead of assuming. And that's what healthy thinking looks like. Because we give the scale too much credit. So can I ask another question? And just think to yourself, how many of you have ever done everything right, and then you stepped on the scale and you saw a number that you didn't like? I sure have. And you thought, "Forget it." Maybe then you ate foods you hadn't planned on eating, or you skipped your workout that day. Or did you give up for the weekend because you believed all your hard work didn't matter? Isn't it amazing that one number can undo an entire week of confidence? But what if that number wasn't even measuring what you thought it was? What if your body was actually improving? What if your muscles were healing? What if you were simply retaining water? What if you had simply eaten a large dinner? What if your digestion had slowed for a day? Wouldn't it be tragic to just quit because of a misunderstanding? I think that happens far more often than we realize. So I want to share something that I've learned with my own journey. There have been mornings where I've woken up, stepped on the scale, and I saw a number I didn't like. And years ago, I would have panicked. I would have been so mad. I would have immediately started to fix it. I would eat less. I would work out more. Question everything. Now, when I step on the scale, I don't panic. I become curious and I ask, what did yesterday look like? Maybe I had a hard workout. Maybe I went out to dinner. Maybe I slept poorly. Maybe I'm just holding water, which for me often happens. In fact, I can fluctuate in 1 week up and down 8 pounds just from water due to circulation issues I have. Maybe my body's just recovering. The scale for me no longer tells me whether I'm succeeding. My habits tell me that. My consistency tells me that. And the choices that I make day after day tell me that. And I want that freedom for all of you. So if the scale isn't actually measuring body fat, then what is causing these daily fluctuations? Why can't you wake up 2 or 3 pounds heavier after doing everything right? The answer is actually fascinating. If in the next section, we're going to talk about the things that can temporarily change your weight, even when you're making incredible progress. And once you understand them, I think you'll stop fearing the scale and you'll start learning to learn from it instead. So we can actually look at the scale and we can find what it's measuring. So when we look at this stuff, we're measuring every single day. Our body is alive. It's adapting, it's healing, it's storing, and it's releasing. And so that's why your body naturally fluctuates. And because it's doing what it's designed to do. So the biggest contributor to your weight fluctuating every day is water. So how many of you ever gone out to eat and you woke up the next morning and you gained 3 pounds? Well, I've done that. Did you really eat enough to gain 3 pounds of body fat overnight? No. Because most of us couldn't physically actually do that. So what happened? Water. Water has weight, and your body's largely made up of water. And if you retain a little more water today than you did yesterday, the scale goes up. And it doesn't mean that you gain fat. It just means you're holding more water, which are two very different things. Another reason why it can go up is your sodium. If you went to a restaurant food is much more higher than sodium than what we cook at home. And when sodium intake changes, your body may temporarily hold on to more water, especially if you eat processed food. That'll also make it go up because there's a lot of sodium in that. Have you ever noticed that after eating out or eating processed food that your ring might fit tighter? Your face feels puffier. Your stomach feels bloated. That's your body responding. It's not failing. It's just responding. So most of the time, as your body returns to its normal routine, that extra water goes away. So we're going to talk about carbohydrates. When you eat carbohydrates, your body stores some of the energy as glycogen. Think of glycogen as your body's quick access fuel tank. And here's what's interesting. Glycogen does not get stored by itself. It gets stored along with water. So if you've been eating a low carb pizza or a low carb for several days and then suddenly you have a pizza or pasta or dessert or just more carbs than usual, that scale may jump. And not because you suddenly gained several pounds of fat, but because you're storing more glycogen and more water comes with it. And that's physiology, not failure. Exercise can also make the scale go up. And that one surprises everyone. Exercise, especially strength training, because you're going to get healthier by doing this stuff. You start lifting weights, you push yourself, and then you feel sore the next day and you step on the scale and it's higher. And you're like, what? Shouldn't exercise make me lose weight? Well, eventually it can help. But in the short term, hard workouts create tiny amounts of damage to your muscles. But that's actually how muscles grow stronger, because the body responds by sending fluid and nutrients to repair the muscles. So temporary healing process can actually increase water retention. So imagine this, you're actually becoming healthier, building muscle, improving your metabolism, and your scale goes up. And you don't understand what's happening because you think your plan isn't working. But your body is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Another reason for the scale changing is inflammation. So staying with the idea, what we just talked about for a second, inflammation isn't always bad. Inflammation is part of healing. And when you cut your finger, your body becomes inflamed around that area. And that's part of a repair process. The same thing happens after a hard workout. Temporary inflammation can mean that your body is healing. Now, chronic inflammation is different, and that's the kind we want to reduce. Highly processed foods, poor sleep, high stress, lack of movement, all of these things can contribute to ongoing inflammation. And inflammation often brings water retention, puffiness, joint stiffness, bloating. And sometimes people think, I gained fat, when what they're really experiencing is inflammation. Another reason that we don't think about on the scale is digestion. And this is an obvious one that we forget because food weighs something. If you eat a big dinner tonight, the food isn't magically going to disappear before morning. It's still moving through your digestive system. The same is true if you're constipated. Everything inside your digestive tract has weight. So if you haven't had a regular bowel movement, the scale might be higher. And not because of fat, but because what's inside of your digestive system. And again, the scale doesn't know the difference. It simply measures total weight. Hormones. For many women, hormones can change the scale dramatically. And some of you already know what I'm talking about. You can almost predict when your weight will go up. Your rings get tighter, you feel bloated, your clothes fit differently, and then a few days later, everything settles back down. Did you suddenly gain fat and lose it 3 days later? No. Hormones influence fluid imbalance. They influence digestion. They influence appetite. And this is especially true during menopause and perimenopause. And it's another reminder that your scale doesn't actually tell you the full story. Another thing that the scale will measure is stress. So let's talk about stress, because stress affects almost everything. Because when we're stressed, our sleep suffers, our eating habits change, we often move less, and sometimes we crave different foods. Stress hormones can also influence fluid balance. So if you've actually had an incredibly stressful week, don't automatically assume that the nutrition stopped working. Ask yourself, how have I been sleeping? How stressed have I been? And what did this week look like? Because remember, your body does not separate stress from nutrition. Everything is connected. So basically, you need to become a detective. And this is where I want you to shift your thinking. Instead of stepping on the scale and saying, I failed, I want you to ask, what is my body trying to tell me? That's a completely different conversation. Maybe you had a restaurant meal. Maybe you had a hard workout. Maybe you're just retaining water. Maybe you're stressed. Maybe your digestion is off. Now you're learning. You're not judging. And that is the becoming method. We replace criticism with curiosity, because curiosity leads to understanding, and understanding leads to lasting change. So stop letting the scale define your success. So I want to leave you with this question. If the scale doesn't tell the whole story, then how should we measure progress? Because I don't want you to walk away thinking, Melissa said I should never weigh myself again, because that's not what I'm saying. The scale is a tool, and it can provide useful information. The problem is when we let it become the only measurement of success. And I think that's where many people get stuck. And have you ever had one of those weeks where you knew you did really well? You followed your plan. You drank your water. You got in your protein. You exercised. And you turned down foods that you normally would have eaten that were bad. And you felt proud of yourself. And then you stepped on the scale and it didn't move. Or maybe it actually went up. It's amazing how quickly one number can erase an entire week of victories. Let me ask you something. Are your clothes fitting better? Did you make progress? If you have more energy, did you make progress? If you're sleeping better, did you make progress? If your blood sugar is improving, did you make progress? If your joints hurt less, did you make progress? If you're no longer thinking about food every hour, did you make progress? You absolutely did. And the problem isn't that you didn't make progress. The problem is you've been measuring the wrong things. There are victories that the scale will never measure. The scale can't measure confidence. It can't measure consistency. It cannot measure discipline. It can't measure the fact that you walked away from sweets and other processed food at work today. It can't measure that you finally cooked a dinner instead of ordering takeout. It can't measure that you played with your kids or your grandkids without getting winded. It can't measure that you no longer need an afternoon nap. It can't measure that your cravings are gone from constant to occasional. Those are victories, real victories. Sometimes we become so obsessed with losing weight that we completely miss becoming healthier. And I don't want that for you. So don't miss the bigger picture. Imagine that someone spends 6 months improving their health. They're sleeping better. Their blood pressure improved. Their A1C improved. They've built muscle. They're stronger. They're happier. They have more energy. And they've lost several inches around their waist. But the scale only changed by 5 pounds. Was that 6 months a success? Absolutely. Now imagine that someone loses 20 pounds by starving themselves. They're losing muscle. They're miserable, constantly hungry. They're thinking about food all day. Is that a success? Not in my book. And in the Becoming Method, we don't change smaller numbers. We chase better health. Sometimes those two things happen together, and sometimes health improves before the scale actually reflects it. But either way, we're becoming healthier. Identity is stronger than motivation. One of the biggest shifts I've ever made was realizing motivation comes and goes. Identity lasts. People often tell me, I just need more motivation. I don't think that's actually true. I think you need a stronger identity. I'm trying to lose weight. It makes a difference from decisions of someone who says, I'm becoming a healthy person. Those are two completely different identities. One sounds temporary and the other sounds permanent. And when you identify changes, your decisions begin changing too. You don't eat healthy because you're on a diet. You don't move your body because you're trying to burn calories. You move because you value your health. You don't sleep because someone told you to. You sleep because you understand that your body needs recovery, and identity will change everything with that. Every choice is a vote. I love this idea. Every decision that you make is a vote. Not a vote for the number on the scale, but a vote for the person you're becoming. Every workout is a vote. Every healthy meal is a vote. Every time you choose to keep going after a difficult day, you're casting another vote. One decision won't change your life, but thousands of decisions, even just tiny decisions, absolutely will change your life. Stop asking, did I lose weight today? Start asking, did I become the kind of person I want to become today? And that's a much better question. So my challenge for you this week is I want you to weigh yourself if that's part of your routine. But I also want you to measure 5 other things: your energy, your sleep, your cravings, your mood, your digestion, your waist measurement, your hip measurement, how your clothes fit, your strength, your consistency. Just pick 5. Because here's what I know. If you only watch the scale, you'll eventually become discouraged. If you watch your whole life, you'll notice victories everywhere. So I want to finish with one last thought. Imagine 2 people are climbing a mountain, and one is staring at their feet, and one says, "I still have so far to go. This is hard, and I don't think that I'm getting anywhere." And the other person occasionally stops and turns around and looks at how far they've already come. They're climbing a mountain, but one sees failure and the other sees progress. So sometimes we get so focused on where we aren't that we completely forget where we started. And you think back to where you were 6 months ago, a year ago. Maybe you're cooking more. Maybe you're drinking more water. Maybe you're moving more than you were. And maybe you're learning to read labels. Maybe you're choosing to put protein first. And maybe you're asking questions that you didn't used to ask. That's growth that you need to celebrate. So I want to leave you with this. The scale is only one chapter in your story. It's not the entire book. So don't give one number the authority to determine your confidence. Don't let one morning erase weeks of consistent choices. Your body is changing every single day, and sometimes in ways that you can measure, and sometimes in ways you can't. Keep showing up and keep making the next healthy choice, because becoming the person you want to become isn't built by one perfect day. It's built by hundreds of ordinary days where you simply chose not to quit. That's what the becoming method's all about. Not perfection, not punishment, not obsession over a number. It's about becoming healthier with one choice, one habit, and one day at a time. So think about this today. Besides the scale, what's one victory you've experienced on your health journey that you're proud of? And then let's celebrate those wins together. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Built, Not Burnt Out. I hope today's conversation reminds you that the scale is just one piece of information. It's not to measure your worth, your effort, or your progress. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd be so grateful if you would subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs this message. And if you're ready to stop starting over and want some support on your own health journey, I'd love to help. You can learn more about the Becoming Method, my coaching programs, and upcoming masterclasses by visiting the links in the show notes. And until next time, remember, health isn't built by one perfect day. It's built one choice, one habit, and one day at a time. Keep becoming the person that you were meant to be. I'll see you in the next episode of Built, Not Burnt Out.